Hey everyone. Or I guess since this is kind of my first video, hi to whatever friend was kind enough to watch. So today we're going to start with the first video in a series I'll be doing on introspection. Now, introspection is the active process of self-discovery. It's the process of sort of digging into oneself, understanding why we think the way that we think, why we feel the way that we feel, where our thoughts maybe come from, some of that like stuff that kind of hides beneath the surface. It's a big part of counseling and really just a big part of self-growth too, is to enhance that understanding through introspection. So as far as our first video on introspection, I wanted to start where a lot of my counseling relationships begin, really kind of whether I intended to or not, which is with values. So values are huge. They are vital when it comes to mental health, when it comes to philosophy, basically everything. They impact the way that we navigate the world. They impact the way that we think both reflexively, but also long-term goal planning. And they kind of impact the way our inner experience is situated. So they're pretty important, and I think that's why it's important that we kind of start there and start talking about values. So let's get into it. So you may already be familiar with values. They may have been brought up by parents or spiritual leaders, maybe teachers or coaches in your environment. They maybe told you about the values that are important to them, or maybe your family has talked about values. They often come up in churches, synagogues, mosques, things like that. Or you may have been exposed to values indirectly, which a lot of us were. So when you're young and you scrape your knee and an adult comes and cares for you, then you learn to value compassion. Or as you're growing up and you see society seeming to exalt wealth and care a lot about rich people, then maybe you learn to value financial success. Or you have a friend that is pretty flaky and often kind of cancels on you last minute, then maybe you learn to value consistency. So we learn to value these things. We pick out our values based on our experiences and how they were impressed on us from other people growing up. But to be more clear, let's define a value. So, what is a value? A lot of times they kind of escape a clear, simple definition, but you know it when you hear it. So, values are also called principles or virtues. Things like patience, kindness, strength. They are things that we grow to find that are important, but they're more concepts. They're not going to be an item or a person. You don't value money, you don't value mom, but you can value success or stability, and you can value family or motherhood, things like this. It's not an individual thing. Um, like I said, it's not going to be an item or a person. Um, you know when you, when you like you cook an egg perfectly to the point where it's like that right level of over medium where it like leaks out, but it's not super runny and it's perfect on a sandwich. Uh, and it's just like you just really nailed that egg. Um, Maybe you value that. I clearly do. And maybe I'm hungry right now too. But so maybe you value that. That's not a value though. So when we're talking about values, we are really just talking about the sort of concepts. And we find that a lot of times people have a lot of these in common. Human beings oftentimes sort of orbit around common values. They have shared values, we call them. So a lot of times you may find like peace, security, fairness, love. A lot of these are shared values. And you may ask, well, if we have so many of these shared values, why does everybody act so differently? And that's a great question. Really, it comes down to the way that we prioritize these values, or what I call the hierarchy of values. Which values we place above others in any given moment or situation, and how that impacts the way that we behave. People, oftentimes, when it gets into it, even though they share many of the same values, they're going to decide which they prioritize, how they're going to rank them, kind of will impact the way that they choose to act in a given situation. So, an example I use a lot when I talk about values and about the difference in prioritizing values is the example of a white lie. So, people kind of have their own ideas about white lies, and some people lean one way or another on whether it's right or wrong, but when we're talking about values, we're not talking about what's right or wrong. So when it comes to a white lie, some people would say that they would value honesty, and that even if it might hurt someone's feelings, they would rather just tell the truth no matter what. That is them ranking honesty above other things. Someone may choose that kindness is more important to them than honesty. They can stomach telling a lie if it makes someone feel better. And so they will choose to rank kindness. Not to say that being honest is ever going to, it has to be mean. I mean, you can say things honestly in a kind way. I would hope you would. But they just sort of rank it differently. And so some people would say, I'm okay telling a lie if it lifts someone up and makes them feel better about themselves. There's really no right or wrong. People are going to come down on it on whichever side they choose, to agree with. But really underneath that, what's happening is just a different prioritization of their values. So that's a good way to think about how we may have all the same values. I mean, I value honesty, I value kindness, all of that. But when it comes down to it, I do typically rank honesty first. So I'm not likely going to tell that white lie. But again, there's no right or wrong. It's just how you've decided to navigate the world and what works best for you. Sometimes, if it's not working, then you can consider shifting your values. And we'll talk about that in future videos as well. But when it comes to values, really just exploring this is huge. So the importance of values and introspection is that they are really kind of touching every single thing you interact with. The sense of disgust you feel in moments, or the anger that you feel when a value is violated. There's so many of these times in our lives where we're not packaging it in terms of values, but a lot of times that's what's kind of happening under the surface. So in this first video of introspection, I just wanted to kind of cover values and get you guys thinking about it. And as the first video on values, hopefully it's a helpful first step, and we can talk more about better ways to enhance your introspection in future videos. All right. Thanks for watching.